think that's what. All right. So welcome everybody to the Therapist Atlas. I am super excited that you're here joining us today. I have our special guest, Pricillia, who is currently pursuing her license in New York City. So she is going to tell us all about her journey. But before we do get into everything, Pricillia, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself? Tell us everything. Tell us who you are, where you're coming from. We want to know the juice.
I'll give you the juice. Hi guys, I'm Pricillia Janelle. I'm a MHC-LP mental health counselor with a limited permit in New York City. And yeah, I'm currently living in the city, seeing clients in the city, both virtually and in person. And my Instagram is @progress with Pricillia. Maybe that's where you guys have seen me. And yeah.
Okay, awesome. And don't worry, I'm going to put everything in the chat or in the description box, wherever I decide to post this.
Yeah.
So I'll give your put your tag information, website, anything that is linked to you, they'll be able to find you. Okay,
Awesome. Sure. And I'll give you
so
my email too. That way people can reach out to me, with any
perfect.
questions that they may have.
All right, awesome. Okay, so this is going to be layered with questions. So I'm going to be asking specific questions in terms of your licensure towards yourself for New York, personal experience and insights, and then just looking ahead what it is that you see yourself doing on this journey. So are you all ready to begin?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, awesome. The first question, what inspired you to pursue counseling as a career, and why New York specifically?
So funny enough, I never, not that I never, but I didn't see myself going into counseling initially. It was kind of just like something that I realized. I was like, damn, like this is something I'm good at. Let me kind of like home in on this. And backstory is that I was pursuing a degree in biology, so I wanted to go to med school. And
Yeah.
mind you, first generation Hispanic family, it's either be a doctor or be a lawyer. There's no in between. So there's a lot of pressure with that. And, mental health wasn't something that was really talked about in my family. It wasn't something that I just didn't know much about it, what was out there. So mind you, I'm in undergrad. I went to undergrad at Florida State University in Tallahassee, did my 4 years there. And my second year of college just broke me down. I was super burnt out. I wasn't used to the fast pace. And I was also in a really dark space. I was just in a dark time in my life. And so looking back, I was definitely depressed. Mind you, I didn't know what depression was. I didn't know there were no conversations about mental health in my life. So, like I said, looking back, I was definitely depressed, definitely full of anxiety, and I was just going about my day to day, and I was very burnt out. And I basically got to a point where I was failing majority of my classes, especially my core classes. And those were the classes that I needed to go to med school. And I was just like, well, I'm not going to make it to med school if my mental health is this bad.
Right.
So I went to my school counselor, my university counselor, and she was just like, yeah, you could also pursue psychology and take it with you to medical school. And I was like, okay. I mean, I didn't know much about anything, mind you, again, first gen. I just took anything anyone said, I was like, yeah, for sure, I'll do that. So I was like, okay, I'll switch my degree to psychology. And
Good
I
choice,
love
by the way.
Yeah, like I loved it. I was finally like I loved what I learned. I loved what I was learning. I was engaged in what I was doing. I kind of like And it to me it was easier. It was definitely easier and more digestible than what I was doing. So while I was getting my life together, it was nice because I was going to school and I was also studying something that I really liked and that was
Yeah.
interesting to me. So then I remember I was sitting in one of my psych classes. I think it was like social psychology,
Yeah.
and some girls, they walk in and they're like, yeah, we're volunteers at 211. It's a crisis intervention
Like,
counseling,
yeah.
and they start to like talk about it. And I don't know why, but I was just like, this sounds dope. Like they were like, is anyone interested? And I raised my hand and I was, oh yeah, Tahila just said I work there too. So I raised my hand and I was like, yeah, I want to do that. Mind you, no experience in counseling, no like knowledge of like anything. Like it was just such a
And I
new,
get thrown into it, basically.
it was just like a new thing for me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I look back at that and I'm like, well, I was just so brave for that because I was so young. Like
Mhm.
mind you, we're talking about like a 20-year-old. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like what did I know about anything? So I basically I did the crisis intervention for 2 years. I got cleared on like the family health line, the every health that you can think of, like, but the most I was active on was a suicide lifeline.
Wow.
And that became my bread and butter because I am the type of person, I realized that the reason why I love crisis counseling is I was able to it's very like, okay, you basically like your goal is to keep the person safe, right? Like that's
Yes.
so like just getting the person out of crisis. And I'm also like kind of I'm just the type of person that I'm very good with structure. And
Yeah.
mind you, someone's life online, there's a lot of structure, a lot of training that we do. And I just
Yeah.
like that structure of like, okay, like it was just like bing bong, like it just like it was just had an order to it. Um,
Mhm.
and then the reason why I bring that up is because, and I'll get into it, and that's what tripped me up about therapy was how almost like it is structured, but it is very client centered, and there's still a really big difference in what I
Yes.
was doing versus what I'm doing today.
Yeah. We have the protocols, but it does, you can't really just fit everybody in the one box all the time. That's the thing with
Exactly.
therapy. Yeah.
Exactly. So you could see how it was kind of just really different from what I was doing.
It
And
was.
but so yeah, I basically I graduated with a psych degree. I was like, I definitely want to, do something still in psychology, but I wasn't fully sold on therapy yet. I was like, I don't know if I could be someone's therapist. And that's like there was like obviously so many things going on, like self-doubt, like what do I think I am? Like, so many things going on in my head, like, like I just can't do that, like,
Yeah.
and lots of imposter syndrome for sure. But that's like a story for another time. But then I'm sorry, I started to do, what did I do? I was a basically like a executive assistant for a woman who she was a lawyer and a psychologist. So she
Yeah.
mixed like law and psychology, and she basically just like became a mentor for me. And she's like,
Good.
you should
Good.
like, she was like, you should go to grad school. Like, you should put all of your knowledge that you have, like, anything you want to do, like you need a graduate degree to do it.
Yeah.
And there comes the imposter syndrome. Me getting like a master's degree, like I don't know if I could do that. Like I just don't know if I'm capable of that. Lo and behold, I was very capable,
Yep. And
and
you're here now.
and I'm here now, and it
Yeah.
was all part of the journey. But so then, yeah, I applied to a bunch of master's programs, got into the one at Nova, and here I am.
Yep. Amazing. Also, shout out to Nova and NSU Sharks. If you're not a shark, you're a bait.
Nova, go Sharks!
Yeah. Okay. Well, you really had such an amazing journey to get here. And I feel a
That
lot
was
of
a lot, yeah.
people resonate with that because even just when you're talking about the first generation thing, mental health is not something that was being spoken about back in the
Oh,
day. So to go through that on your own and having to navigate that space, that just shows your strength and resilience. So I'm super glad that you chose the field that you're in, because you're such a compassionate person too.
oh, thank you.
Yes, you really are. By the way, people, they were probably wondering, but me and Priscilla, we went to school together, so that's how I know her. So I can tell you her character. Yeah, but yeah, you really just are amazing, and I'm super happy that you chose the field that you're in right now.
Thank you. And likewise.
Yes. Okay, so now let's get into the next question. What is an MHC-LP?
So MHC-LP is basically a mental health counselor limited permit. And the difference between a licensed mental health counselor and a mental health counselor with a limited permit is that it's exactly what it sounds. It's basically a limited permit to practice, which means that eventually it will expire. You have to have 3,000 hours in the state of New York, 1,500 hours direct. So direct
1,500 direct, right? Wow.
direct, yeah, direct, like you working with clients face to face,
Yeah.
either in person or virtual, just direct hours. And it's a long journey. So once you get your master's degree and then you go to you obviously have to pass your licensure exam and all those different things, and you get your 3,000 hours, you become fully licensed. And this is kind of just like the in between where you're getting your hours and you're under supervision of another therapist.
Right, right. So I remember at one point I was even looking at getting licensed in New York. I thought it was going to be a pretty simple thing, but then I think it was you I spoke with, and you were telling me that you actually had to be there in person to do these hours. Is that right?
Yeah. So, and Tahila just asked the question, is this the same as a registered intern? Yes, this is the same. It's just a different title for what it's basically the equivalence of what an RMHCI is in Florida.
Yeah. And for any of my Canadian peoples that are coming from Ontario, it is the equivalent of our registered psychotherapist qualifying. I know that some other people, they have like associate license. So the license that you get before you get fully licensed, but make sure you check your state and, your country's requirements, because everything is different. But yes, so going back to the question about the in-person when you're doing your hours, because I know some people, like for Florida, you can do it virtually when you have your RMHCI and other places. But for New York, they're very specific with their requirements. So you have to be in person, correct?
So, in the state of New York, you know, you can, that was something I was confused about. So I'm glad that you brought that up. You can also get your hours and be virtual. You just have to make sure that it can get a little bit sticky. The main difference with New York is that you need to have a supervisor
Yeah,
before you apply for the limited permit, and that's what makes things hard.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay.
and they want to make sure that, because basically they want to make sure that, you know how like in Florida, there's like that thing where like you'd like pay for a supervisor.
Yeah,
That doesn't exist here. Like you cannot do that. You can't have like it's like they see it as like that's like so transactional in the sense like you know what I
I
mean?
like
Like
that. Like, so you don't pay for supervision at all?
it's completely free. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. I will say, so for Florida, the same kind of process, you have to have a supervisor before you get your RMHCI. Like the supervisor has to send in a letter and then they'll give it to you. But a lot of people don't get free supervision. Like, and that's even with private practice, right?
Yeah, this is a private practice. No, supervision is free, and they Tahila, I'm sold. Yeah, they
I
don't
don't
allow.
go.
New York's pretty, I will say, like there people talk a lot of crap about New York, but they do things right. in my opinion, like this is a state that like they don't play around. You know, there's too much of a mental health crisis to be like playing around right now, and that's like one thing that I can feel it. Like they just don't let you do things however it is that you want. You know, everybody has to stick to the status quo and what the rules are. No one's exempt from it.
Okay, well, that's beautiful. And I think it's also impactful when you have new grads coming out because this time period, it's so crucial to our development. And I know people like some supervisors, they charge $200 an hour. You
It's
have other
insane.
supervisors that
Yeah.
will charge lower, but it costs so much money. And on top of that, you're just coming out of school, trying to find a job, all of these things. So you're right. New York kind of got it going on. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, supervision is free, should be free. There's no reason why a new grad, I can't imagine, I can't afford $200 a month as a new graduate. I mean,
I
that's
will
just,
say that's the high end of what I've seen when I was applying, like for trying to
yeah,
find a supervisor. I've seen people that charge like sometimes 70, $75, but that's still like you're doing that every single week.
you're doing that every week and it adds up.
Yes, it does. Tahila said one of her questions, do you mind sharing what the process of getting a supervisor in New York is like? Who pays for it then? Great question.
That is a great question. So the practice pays for it. You know, they just, I'm assuming that it's salary for the supervisor, right? They, every time they have supervision, they get paid by the company. Um, costs $0 to me. Um, like I said, completely covered by the company. And sorry, what was the other thing that she asked? What was the process? Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
so what was the
yeah,
process of getting a supervisor
of
in New
getting a supervisor. So getting a supervisor, you have to basically apply for all like I applied for everything that I saw on Indeed. Like I was, and I don't know if you remember, Ananta, but I was like going crazy at one
York?
point. I was
I remember.
I was like I New York is extremely competitive, but there are a lot. It's like it's very competitive, but it's still kind of like there are a lot of people that are hiring. There's just a lot of people here. Like it's just like there's just a lot of, you know what I mean? Like there's no shortage of people who need, especially MHCLPs, like they want to hire more than anything MHCLP than
Mhm.
an LMHC because they can get away with paying us less.
Yeah, yeah.
So to say, but they get away with paying us less. So
Right.
um and
And even
getting
when,
oh sorry.
oh no, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and getting a supervisor was basically I literally just went on Indeed and I put MHCLP. You know, it'll say it like right in the you know MHCLP required this and that, and this is where it was kind of like annoying because it was like some of them already. This is so weird. Like some of them all kind of were like they didn't want to. I I don't want to like assume, but it almost felt like they didn't want to support you in the process
Mhm.
of going like into your licensure. So they would rather hire someone that was like MHCLP and you already had your permit number. You get what
But
I
that,
mean?
yeah, but
So it was kind of annoying because I'm like,
yeah, because you don't
well, I
have it
can't get
yet.
a supervisor until you hire me. So it's like, but they kind of just wanted someone that was like already like had, you know, like I don't know, it was weird. Like they just didn't want to almost like go through that process with you.
Yeah. They just kind of wanted to skip it and just say you already had it. But the thing is that
Right.
you can't have more than one supervisor, right?
No, you can. So so just to kind of give you a little bit of background is that a, New York City is so expensive that like a lot of the people that I've talked to, the therapists, they have more than one job. So like they see clients in one practice and then they see clients in another practice. So like so that they can kind of have like a couple streams of income.
Mhm.
So like for me, like I'm working at a practice, I run groups with another practice, and I just added another supervisor so that I can work for another practice that takes Medicaid, because I'm
Oh,
seeing that there's such a necessity for affordable mental health care.
right.
So I wanted to make myself open to also taking Medicaid clients.
Okay, so just to clarify, wherever you're working, that's who has to supervise you. So, like, for example, for myself, I work for another employer and I have a separate supervisor. Is that something that's possible, or do you have to be supervised by the person that has that clinic?
Yeah, they have to be employed there. They
Mhm.
have like it's that part is very
Very
strict.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so basically they have a certain like my where I both places that I'm working at, they
Mhm.
have assigned like LMHCs that are also like able to supervise.
Okay.
And yeah, like they just like, and they have them on like a specific, they make more because they are supervisors.
Right.
So they give them that salary, that, you know what I mean, like,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
can I chime in here?
Of course.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. That explains a lot. So it sounds like the practice or agency gives you the supervisors once you work with them. But what if you're doing like private practice too? Do you get a supervisor for that separately or you don't need to?
So in the state of New York, you cannot open up your own private practice as an MHC-LP. And that is very different from Florida in the sense that, and that's why you have that kind of like the, what is it? Like people kind of taking advantage, right? Because like you have the opportunity to open up a private practice as an RMHCI, which is great. It's just that in the state of New York, they don't allow that. And so you would have to find basically a place of work, and they have to have LMHCs who are also supervisors, sorry, to
Okay.
supervisees.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Yeah. So
Does
New
that make
York.
sense? Sorry. It's
No,
it's
it
Yeah, it
does.
definitely makes
like
sense.
confusing. I know it was such a confusing thing for me because it's like that piece in itself is just what makes New York so different from the Florida licensure.
Absolutely. And I've heard it even when I started my program. Everyone always said the top three, the most rigorous process for licensure was New York, Florida, and California. But they always said if you're good in Florida, you should be good everywhere else. But I feel like the top two is literally New York and California. Florida,
Definitely.
you know, Florida is hard, and each one they usually take the NCHMCE exam. I think that's what the acronym is.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, New York seems like it's a lot more rigorous with the process. So it's not something that you just come in and just apply and boom, happy go lucky and you're good to go. But
Oh no, it's a very long process too.
for
Yeah,
sure.
it has its flaws, don't get me wrong, but I think that it was refreshing to see that there was just this like, almost like these rules that I felt were kind of fair. I was like, right, this is kind of fair, like I could hurt someone, like this is someone's life. Like I just graduated. I don't, you know what I mean? Like what we learn in grad school, while it's so important. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it for yourself that being a therapist in the real world is just like so different
Completely different.
from like everything that we learned.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy that we talked about the supervisor piece. Let's get into a little bit more questions here because some of them we kind of already discussed. So we talked about the hours. Yeah. And what advice would you give someone just starting that process? Let's ask that question. Yeah.
Yeah. So what advice do I have? I would say like don't procrastinate. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't procrastinate, like just get it done. It's annoying. Nobody wants to go through it. Like, you're gonna be upset, you're gonna feel anxious, like, but the faster you get it done, like, you know, the faster the process goes. And I would also say don't settle for just any job, you
Beautiful.
know, because your first job outside of grad school is really, really going to set the scene for your experience also as an LMHC, because you don't want to be burnt out by the time you're fully licensed, right? Like you can't. There was. Do you remember Rachel when she came to speak at our school?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And she hit on that too, right? Like how she got so burnt out from, you know, her time as an intern, and it got to a point where the fire just, you know,
Yeah.
dinged. And so don't settle. Like, definitely, if you feel like they're sketchy and they're like not paying you what you want to, like, you know, get paid, like, look at other options.
Absolutely.
This isn't going to be the only job that reaches out to you. You're more than qualified. Just believe that you are, and take a leap of faith on applying to jobs that maybe you feel less qualified for. You'd be surprised.
Great advice. The other thing too, I will add in there, if you're just about to leave school, try not to apply too early. Wait until like the last month to get your stuff going. Like start looking at those jobs, but essentially, if you're doing it 2 months, 3 months in advance, you know, you're not really going to get through with everything because you're going to have to wait for your degree to get conferred. You're going to have to wait for transcripts, all of those things. And that's not happening until a few weeks after you actually are done school. So wait until like the last month to really start this process. So that way, when you're actually doing the interviews and whatnots, then things will be faster with you getting your license instead of waiting months to get everything done.
That's great advice for sure. And I was actually I was one of those, like, the one that I was like right away, because
Yeah,
I thought
me too.
that would, you know, help me. I don't know
Yeah.
why. I was like, okay,
Anything,
faster.
it made us go crazy and we're like, oh my God, we need something, we need something.
And
Take your time.
take your time, like, you know. And the thing is that that's easier said than done, because of the fact that I think that's something that needs to be said, is like, it sucks to wait and you're not making any money. And like, I don't know about you, but like, I had went from like working two jobs. Like, I was working, like, I think I
I
told you, like, I was
remember.
working for the
Yeah,
court, and then I was
yeah.
also at the same time doing this the internship at the private practice. Prior to that, we were at the rehab. So like,
Yeah,
I was just always on my feet, right?
yeah.
I was always on my feet. I always had something to do. My days started like literally at like 6 a.m. and I did not, I was just like all day until like we were done with school, which was like sometimes like 8. We were leaving that chair at like 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a lot. And like, I went from like, okay, I took a trip to Europe after you graduated, because I just had to.
Oh,
I need to like get out. Like, I need to do something with my life. I
yeah,
had saved up some money, so I was like, we're going away.
yeah.
So after I came back from my vacation, though, I remember looking at like, I remember like I had to do the application, and I was like, oh, it's gonna take like 3 weeks. Yeah, try like 2 months. Like, it was like 2 months of,
Seriously, seriously, 2 months to get
yeah,
things together.
two
Yeah,
months. And I was like, I was just like rotting. Like, I was just straight up like rotting. Like, I was like, I have nothing to do.
yeah.
No, it was just like, and so during that time, obviously, was when I moved to New York City. I remember getting to New York. So I did everything by like the end of August, moved to New York City in December, wasn't approved until like late October. Like, I started seeing clients in November, basically. Like,
Yeah,
November 1st was like my first session with a client here in New York. And I had already been here for like 2 months.
yeah.
So basically, I I was just like, I was going crazy. I don't know about you, but like, I was like, I gotta make some money. I gotta do something. Like,
I didn't start seeing clients until mid-October.
yeah. Oh,
It was hard. It was hard for sure to just be still because we're always used to on the
you're so,
go doing
yeah.
something. And if we feel like we're not filling in that time, we feel as if we're less than. We're not making progress. Right?
Yeah. It's
So
see the thing is that it's fair though because like I don't this is something that I think is like kind of screwed in my opinion. I don't think it's fair. Like we literally can't do anything for the time that we're like in this weird limbo, and I don't know of any other profession that kind of just like leaves their people out to dry like this. Like it was so it was like so disheartening to
mhm.
be out of a job, and like I'm like what if I didn't have support from my family? You know,
Yeah.
like I was like, what if I didn't save up enough? Like, what if I, like, there were so many things that I was like so grateful for that I have support from my family, that you know, my boyfriend lives in New York. Like, I had people here. Like, you know, I had saved a bunch of money because I knew I wanted to do this. But like, I'm like, not everyone has that. And I was just like, what would I have done? You know, and I don't find it totally fair to do that to new grads. But it was pretty disheartening. And I was like, why is like the only thing that I can do right now, like go work at Starbucks?
True. It's true. And I will say
You
that
know,
it's
make
even
some
just a
money.
country thing. It like in Canada, it's even worse because I don't want to talk bad about our college, but with CRPO, it took me quite some time to get my license there, my qualifying license. And when I was trying to apply for jobs, like every job will tell you they're looking for the person that has their qualifying license. You can't get anything. So it took months for you to even secure something. So if anybody is even coming from the US and trying to apply, or not even just coming from the US, but coming out of school, just know that there is going to be a period of time where it's going to be hard to secure something. Like you said, you had to go and sustain yourself by going to Starbucks and doing those things. So if you
Oh no,
find,
I thought about it. I had saved
oh, you
enough.
thought about it.
That was
Okay.
like, I was just like, why is the only thing that I was like, I have a master's degree on my wall. Like I can't even like, I was like, I'm about to walk into like, I was like, what do I do?
For a
I need
second, I was like, I'm like, you went away. I'm like, where you working at Starbucks in Italy or something?
No, I was just saying, like, I'm like, it was just crazy to me that the only job that I could really like hire me was like something super like low paying,
Outside of the field, yeah.
and like outside of the field, because I wasn't, my master's in counseling was nothing. You know what I mean? It meant nothing if I didn't have a permit number.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it was completely up to the state to give me that, and it takes them a while. So if you're watching this and you're in that process, just know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It gets better. You'll get your clients. You'll make your income, and soon enough you'll have your little matcha and get the stuff that you want to get.
Exactly. Okay, so the next question here, what resources, networks, or organizations in New York were most helpful during your journey?
So this one's actually might come as a surprise, but social media, specifically Facebook.
Oh,
Okay, like Facebook groups are so great. Like
yes.
there's so much information on Facebook. There's a group for everything, which is
Thing.
what's
There's a group for
crazy.
new
Like
private practice. There's a group for new
every-
therapists.
everything that you can think of, someone has thought of it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
like so a lot of the community outreach that I do. See, New York is small. I mean, it's big, but it's small. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy. Like it's huge, but it's like it's really there's a community here for sure. Like you'll find your people.
Nice.
And like I just post all the time. Like I live on the Upper East Side, and there's literally a group called Upper East Side Girlies.
Oh, nice.
There are
Are
people
those the
that
girls that you were doing videos with?
No, those are just my friends. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Those are just like
oh
my
my
friends
gosh.
that I met through a book club. And funny enough, one of them who I've gone really close with, well, I've
Yeah.
gotten close with all of them, but one of them I got really close with was she also worked at my job. She worked at the practice and we met there in a book club. So it was pretty funny.
Oh, great.
So it's cool. She's also my coworker. And yeah, so you'll just post everywhere. Like post everywhere, like get you kind of have to like you kind of have to be a little bit in the beginning like um just putting yourself out there. Like you just got to get over like that fear of like, people are going to look at me, like I don't want to put these like, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to put these things up. Like it's like, girl, you got to do what you got to do
Yeah.
and put your flyers up, give people your business cards,
Yeah.
connect with therapists. That is the most that is where your fruits of labor should be going to, is like building a community of therapists that not only can support you but also like support your practice in the sense of like those connections, those therapists are gonna be the ones that refer clients to you.
100%.
And like those are they know people too, you get what I mean? It's like the most successful therapists, I don't know about anywhere else, but at least in New York City that I've seen, the most successful therapists are everything is word of mouth
Oh,
here.
wow.
Like word of mouth is the best like way to like pretty much like from what I've seen.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, like I said, the where your labor should be going to is reaching out to those therapists, not being afraid to put yourself out there and just being like, hey, I'm a new therapist. I just
Yeah.
moved to the city.
Yeah.
Let's go for coffee. There's no shortage of coffee shops here.
Love it.
No, I'm serious. Like if I'm not doing something for my like if I'm not doing something to like get clients or anything like marketing wise or like seeing clients, like every that is like a separate thing. Like if I'm not doing that, like I'm networking with my other therapists and I'm going for coffee. I have a networking event on Saturday where I'm literally just I don't know what to expect. It's like coffee, biscuits. I don't know. So it was like advertised as that. Like anything that I see, I'm not even joking. I'm like, I'm going to that because I'm going
Of
to meet other
course.
therapists there.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
So, the next question. In your experience, how does the mental health field in New York compare to other states? And then also, are there any specific populations or issues you've encountered more frequently while practicing in New York?
How does it differ from other states? So let's see. I kind of want to read what I wrote
Yeah, of
because
course.
I wrote this kind of like about a couple weeks ago and yeah. I talked about Florida being the Wild Wild West. I really do think it's the Wild Wild
So on at the bus like that. Okay.
West. So yeah, so New York laws, they're a bit more restrictive,
Mm-hmm.
less exploitive for sure.
What do you mean by less exploitive?
Like I said, I just think that whole like paying for a supervisor, I think it's pretty
Oh,
exploitive for
yeah.
like new therapists. I think that they protect you as a clinician more,
Yeah.
and by protecting the clinicians, you're also
Protecting.
you're protecting the clients.
Absolutely.
And I think that New York gets a bad rep, but I think that I think it's more efficient in my opinion. Also not allowing to have just anyone open up a private practice. Like, you know, I think there are so many amazing, you know, new grads that, you know, open up their private practice, but you really have to ask yourself the question of like, am I ready to do this? You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
That I'm ready to do. Um, And notice how I say less, not that it doesn't happen at all, right? Like the exploitation. Something I've noticed is that even though MHC-LPs, mind you, New York City does have to give you a better, because they take out so much in taxes, and that's like another thing. Like, you know, we pay a lot in taxes. You have to be making more, right? So like I remember like talking to some people at Nova who were applying for jobs strictly in Florida, and their employers were like talking about like $30,000 a year, and I'm like, how do you
Seriously. Seriously. Yeah.
you know? And not saying that it's like any better here, like by like leaps and bounds better, no.
Yeah.
But I do think that it is like somewhat better. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that there are laws that protect clinicians.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. Like when I was even looking at the salary, it's so much better. Even when you become fully licensed, it's like, whoa, the opportunities are endless.
When
So
you become fully licensed, yes, yeah.
the bank that you can make. Yeah.
No, they do, they compensate well. Like I said, not leaps and bounds, like, you know, we're not talking like a 30K jump or nothing. Like we're just talking like, okay, like I can live
You
off of
can live it for yourself.
right. Like I can live off of this.
Yeah.
And like I said, something I noticed was that there there needs to be more affordable mental health care.
Yes. Yeah.
It's getting a little bit ridiculous. I think that, and this is just my opinion, by the way, and I'm not an LMH. I don't know how I will feel as an LMHC. So I just want to preface by saying that I think that
Yeah.
our work is so important. I think that, yes, absolutely. Like, you know, what your rate is what your rate, and that's what you're worth. So I don't want to sound insensitive to people who have a rate that, you know, is high, but that I like that's what they're worth, and I totally get that. It's just that it makes mental health care just so expensive, and I have clients who like reach out and they're like they're just like, this is like it, like we are like some of the cheapest rates in the city from what I've seen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I wouldn't even consider my rate that like that cheap. I know personally that I, as a therapist, would not be able to afford my rate. And that sometimes makes me like, I'm like, oh my God. And mind you, I don't set the rate, like the company sets the rate, but like I know that I would not be able to afford the rate. And that kind of makes me feel some type of way, because I'm like, sometimes when I'm telling a client my rate, I'm like, I don't fully expect them to just be like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, yes, I can afford this. Like, and it sucks because it's like, I have consultations, and like you connect with your client, like, you know, like your prospect, like you're looking forward to working together. And, you know, I like to be super transparent about money, because that is also
Yes.
what's going to affect the therapy. They have to
Absolutely.
be able to afford it, you know?
Instead of doing a weekly session, it can end up being once every 2 weeks because of pay, right? So it takes
Because
some
of
time.
pay. Yeah.
What would
So,
you say is like
oh,
the average um for the compensation for mental health therapy in New York?
so
What
the
are the
average,
prices?
yeah, the average rate is from probably on the cheap end, $150 to $300 per hour.
Wow, per hour. That's
Yeah.
the you're going from the minimum of 150.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that. Yeah. That's like the
I'm just
lowest.
like calculating because I'm like, mind you, for Canadians, that is US dollars. Okay.
US dollars. Yes.
US dollars. Okay.
150 on the low end.
Yeah.
And any, like, I've seen therapists charge $300, like a premium rate of $300,
Yeah.
and they don't take insurance. So
Like, are they charging $300 if it's like a extended session? Because I know sometimes if you're doing a couple session, they do the extended of like 90 minutes and whatever. So it's so it's
no,
like just for the
I
1 hour.
no, I literally know a girl who, she told me her therapist was charging her $300 for the hour, And again, no shame to the therapist. Understand, make your money. She's probably a great, phenomenal therapist. Like, put your, if that is what you feel your values at, like 100%. It's just that it makes people also be like, oh, she's charging that, like we're gonna charge that too. And there's a lot of, like, here in New York City specifically, I don't know about other states, but there's a lot of like boutique private practices, and they just tend to just charge more, you know.
Boutique private practices.
Boutique private practices are basically like very bougie private practices. They are like, um it's just like it's just a very like manicured, like, when you're in a boutique private practice, like,
Yeah.
um and I don't want to name any. I don't want to name drop any, but
Yeah. Yeah. We're not gonna name drop.
there's a couple that I'm
One of the
aware of. And
lawsuits.
yeah, and they're like, it's like gorgeous. Like when you walk in, it's like beautiful. Like it's like, wow. Like all the therapists are like so pretty. Like I don't know how to explain it. It's just like it's like a little
Is
like
it kind of like, because you know how they have selling sunset and whatever? It's kind of like that kind of feel.
yes,
Like, instead of
literally.
real estate, it's
Yeah, it's like,
therapy.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
lot
I
of
wouldn't
that.
be surprised though, because I mean, what you explained was like New York is expensive, right? So I know sometimes when clinicians are charging a rate, they're charging based off of where they are living. So, and also the type of clientele that they're are trying to seek, right? So if they're seeking clientele on the higher end of their, income, then they may be more attracted to that person, or that person might be more attracted to this boutique just because of that. So I think they're also cutting off certain clientele, which to each his own. I'm not going to say if it's right or wrong.
Right. Well,
But I
what
could definitely see where
right.
it's
We
coming
see both
from.
sides, right?
Yeah.
Like I really do. Like I see both sides. Totally understand. Like, yes, that is why, and you're correct. That is why they're doing it. They're cutting off a certain
Yeah.
tax bracket.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another certain tax bracket, and I get it. I just feel like personally going into this, that wasn't my mission. And again, I don't know where I will be in the next 5 years or so. Like, I don't know how I'll feel about this from a business perspective. I understand why it's done. It's just like, it's for me as a new clinician, I'm trying to expand the most that I can. And my mission is more so to learn. And it's hard as a new therapist to, I don't know how they do it. So I really can't speak, but for them, it's just like when you're working at those boutique private practices, like as a new therapist, like nobody knows you and you're charging a super high rate, and like how do you get clients? I don't know, like, so for me, like, and mind you, the practice that I'm at right now is it's not a boutique private practice, but it is still on the higher end.
Yeah.
It is still on the higher end. And just for full pay transparency, I charge a little bit more than the company charges a little bit more than the minimum.
Yeah.
It's $175 per session.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's without insurance, mind you. So if you have insurance, there are some insurances that they take, but it's still, you got to find people that are, able to afford that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So definitely I can see where you're coming from, because that's the minimum that you're charging. Um yeah. So I will say too, because for me, full transparency, I charge 170 and I'm in Yellowknife. But Yellowknife now, how I've done it was look at it geographically to see what is the average that everyone here charges, and the average is around that, right? And
Yeah.
you have other people that are charging around 200 depending on the experience level, but from what I'm seeing, that is meaning the average of the starting. But most people, they'll utilize their insurance to be able to cover it. So it just really depends on, the location. And
Mhm.
even for Florida too, I know like my practice, they'll charge 150 for their therapy sessions. So the affordability is definitely difficult to manage, because I've heard people too also say that they want us to treat the mental health fields the same way that we would treat it with other doctors and physicians, right? Because physicians, they would have their own rate that they charge, and it's higher. So you have like on the other end, people are like, oh, I'm not too sure if I want to charge lower, because then if you're charging lower, then everybody's going to be expecting the lower end, and then they're not going to respect the field. So you're hearing, I don't know what is the right way to do this, because I
There's
see
pros
both
and
sides,
cons to both,
right?
that's for sure. I
Yeah.
think that at the end of the day, unfortunately, the people that get screwed the hardest are always going to be the people that, you know, just can't afford therapy. And it's sad, right? Like, and that's what I'm trying to say, like, that they're hopefully for something in the future is that we can just make mental health care affordable for all. And I don't know what that looks like. Like you just said, you don't know what that looks like. We don't know what's right or wrong, or kind of like, but as we get more experience in the field and see, like, how can we do it? Like, that's something that I definitely am putting, like a mental note for myself, that like I'm noticing more and more, like, wow, like this is just, it can really become just such a bill, right? Like it really racks up such a bill. And the difference between us and a doctor is just that, like, we see our clients weekly,
Yeah.
right? We see our clients
Great,
weekly.
great point. Great point.
And so it's not just 175 for that one session, it's 175 every single week.
Yeah.
And that can get really costly.
Yeah. No, that's a very, very good point that you just made there. Hey, that's gonna have to be like a tagline. Chop that piece out there. Put that out there. Okay. All right. So the other questions.
Tahila wrote something in the chat too.
She did. How did I not see this? Oh my gosh.
Did you apply to be a registered intern in Florida too, or you knew you were going to New York? I knew I was going to New York. I always loved New York. I dreamed about it since I was a little girl. Like I said, I was born in New Jersey, and like it was just something fun me and my mom did sometimes. Like we would go into the city, like go shopping in Soho, like, and I remember just looking around so like starry-eyed. When I was young, I had like a New York City poster on my wall. Like I just,
You
it
just
was,
knew it was for you. Yeah. You knew it was for you. You felt
I
it.
just loved it. There's such an energy in the city, I can't describe it. And I met my boyfriend here in the city. So we actually just did one full year, one lap around the sun a couple of days ago. So
Congrats.
thanks. So yeah, and I remember, Nanta, you were there for it all. Like you literally were like, I think you were like one of the first people I told too when we were in grad school. Like who knew that I was in a relationship with someone who was in New York, and that was a really big, obviously, motivator for like moving. Although I always wanted to, I still obviously. Oh, she said I'm
She
on.
said she's in the same boat.
Yeah, so I just wanted to end the distance, and I always loved New York, so I was like, you know what? What better time than now to just go full throttle and do it.
Oh, love that. Love that. And then the other question that Tahila had, what's the process of applying to be an MHC LP compared to a registered intern in Florida? Did we?
So the process, I have some of the forms that
I can
uh,
speak on the intern registration for Florida. So essentially, things are going to be changing. You're going to need to come from a KCREP accredited program. So what that means is that you need to have specific course requirements that meet their standards. So for example, you need to take a career course, a human sexuality course, diagnosis course, and more. And then you need to have the certain amount of internship hours. So I think it's like Florida's 700 hours. Luckily for Nova, we had 750 hours. And then once you have that, your degree has to be conferred. And after that, you have to have a supervisor write a letter in to say that they're going to be your supervisor. And then what was the next thing? I don't remember doing anything else other than that.
I guess just like applying to the state.
Applying to the state, and that was it. It was a really simple process to get your registered intern license. The LMHC though it's Amani says just a long process.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. This
It
takes long. Yeah.
it takes time, right? Because it's not just okay, I get the supervisor. You actually have to reach out to your supervisor, see if you are a good fit with your supervisor, making sure the rate is appropriate for you. So it's not something that is just an easy thing to just get through right away. But for your LMHC, once you get your RMHCI, I think you have to do, what's it? I can't remember, 2,000 hours. I'm just going off the top of my head, but you can go on the Florida State board, 1,500 hours. Thank you, Imani. 1,500 hours in total. And then 100 hours, I think, is direct contact hours. So hold on. I just have to go back to you, Priscilla. I'm really taking in what you said. 1,500 hours direct?
Direct. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm pretty sure we're 100 hours direct. And that's also for no, 100 hours of supervision. That's what it is. 100 hours of supervision. My bad. Yeah. So wait, how many hours of supervision do you have to get for New York?
That's such a great question that I'm so sorry. I don't know. So let's Google that because I'm not too sure about how many hours of supervision. I personally just have supervision every week.
Yeah.
I'm about to have double supervision with this other practice
Oh man.
as I'm in the
In the
process.
meantime, while you search that up,
Yeah.
so it's 1,500 hours in total, and I think it's 1,000 hours direct contact and then like 100 hours of supervision. Do not quote me on this. Please check the Florida State Licensure Board. And then you have to take your licensing exam. I took the exam and I passed the exam. So if anybody needs some, tips or anything, I got you. And then you also have to take like these 3 courses, like mandatory courses, like one in HIV and sex aid. And then what's the other one? I can't even remember. I can't remember the other ones, but there are 3 main courses that you have to take. It's very simple. And then I think that's basically it. You send everything in, you have your supervisor sign off on all your hours, and you get your full license. So yes.
So let's see. It says you must receive an average of 1 hour of in-person supervision per week or 2 hours every other week.
Yeah. Yeah, same thing. But the in-person, we don't have to be in person in Florida. So you can do it virtually. Are they going to change that language though, Priscilla? Like, I'm like, because it seems like it's, yeah.
What
Hopefully.
do you mean by that?
Because you're saying in person, but like in the beginning we were talking and you expressed that we could, like some people could do their supervision virtually.
Yeah, I don't know why it's saying in-person supervision. I personally have, and I know so many other therapists that have virtual supervision. So perhaps that has changed. This is an AI overview. So this might just be outdated. Could be before COVID. But no, there are a lot of people who have virtual supervision, and it's pretty common. So
You know what I think it is though? Because I think I remember I did contact someone from the licensure board in New York. I think you have to be in the state of New York when you are doing supervision, even if it's virtual, at least like
oh, that
you
is very true. Yes.
can't be residing in another country or another state. You have to reside in New York to be supervised.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so does your supervisor.
Yes. Yeah.
So does
So
your supervisor. So
yeah.
it makes sense. In case of an emergency, you always want to be close.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Tehila says, thoughts on working remote in Florida and work towards licensure and living in New York. I personally like working remote in Florida. It's super accessible, easy. Outreach in Florida is great. So I'm in the I was in the Broward County area. So for people that don't know, that's like Fort Lauderdale, that side. But I can see clients that are in Tampa, and I can see clients that are in Port St. Lucie or wherever, right? So the accessibility is great. Um, what does, I would say, is a drawback when you're working for a practice, you may not be able to attend certain events because sometimes the clinicians, they all like to hang out, you know, so you can't really go there all the time. So you may have to travel to meet each other up. So that could be, that has been one of the drawbacks, but I personally like it because it's just easy to get things done.
Yeah, so Tahila, I saw myself living here more long term. I probably won't leave the city for a minute. And I saw it, it just made more sense for me. And that was a really good point that you made, at Ansel. Like, that is a drawback, that it's like there are certain things that you're gonna have to sacrifice. And for me, I didn't want to sacrifice those connections, and like just being a New York City therapist. I practice in New York City. Like, I see, like I said, like I see clients here, I know therapists here. Like, I knew that my community, I wanted it to be here because I could see myself here more long term.
Yeah.
And that's something that you just want to think about, is like, that what I talked about, that is so important, like having that pool of therapists that that can refer you clients. Like, if you meet a client, if you meet a therapist here in New York City and you're networking, like, they won't be able to refer you clients because you're going to be a Florida therapist and you can't practice across state lines. So if that client's residing in New York City, most likely they are, like, you're just gonna, you just won't have that, like, you won't have that networking capability as you would. You get what I mean? Does that make sense?
For sure. 100%.
That's just something to keep in mind. And that was something that I personally just did not want to sacrifice.
Yeah. And I will even say too, for me, it's hard being in Yellowknife because, you know, I'm active in Florida. So trying to maintain your connections, you have to extend yourself so much more than how you would if you were in person. And even just practicing therapy is different from in person to virtual. So in my internship when I was in school, I did it in person, and you're able to gauge people, you know, their body language better, you feel energies, you can just tell. With remote, you can still do that, but it's going to take you're going to have to be a lot more vigilant and pay attention more with body language. And sometimes you have connection issues. I've had connection issues before, but you know, things get resolved. So those are little things that you have to be mindful of.
Absolutely. You also want to keep in mind that in New York City, you're going to downsize in space, and like, it's just the right of way. It's just you're gonna live in a place that is probably smaller than what you're used to. So you can be definitely in tighter quarters. And so, like, I personally am so grateful that I'm hybrid, both in person and virtual, because I get that break from my little 7x7. A little club.
Oh, I got you in a little closet, girl.
Yeah. So space is just is smaller.
Yeah.
Obviously, as a new grad, this was all I could afford, and I did not want to sacrifice location. I was like, I want to be in a good location, but that also meant smaller spaces in a
Yeah.
pre-war building.
At least you got a space.
But
You got
yes, exactly. So the point that I'm trying to make is that, like, you will be in a smaller space, probably, and you want to make sure that you're not also losing your noodles just like in your apartment all the time. I like having my hybrid schedule. I like going to my little company parties. You know what I mean? I like
yeah.
I
Little
like,
company friends get
yeah,
lit.
I like going, I'm a very social person. I like going to coffee with other therapists, and like, I just did not want to lose that. I feel like that is what makes this for me, like, the process that it is, right? Like, it makes it more fun. And that is why I shied away from, because I thought about it, getting my license in Florida. I also want you to keep in mind that nobody is exempt from this tax. I thought that perhaps if I worked in Florida, no, if you reside in New York, you're paying state tax, period.
Yeah. Yeah. That's insane. So like they said once you step foot.
Once you step foot in the Big Apple,
Yeah. Yeah. My
they were
goodness.
like, you are not exempt from the state tax. So it was just like, and I don't even get the perks. Like, I was like, no, I'm not doing it. Like,
So there's a balance of pros and cons, right? The no
yeah,
supervision, but
exactly.
going into taxes.
Exactly.
Oh
Exactly.
man. Okay. Wow. All right. So I'm going to probably ask maybe one or two more questions and then wrap things up. Let's go into looking ahead. Oh, actually, this question I kind of like. What is one thing you wish you knew before starting your licensure process in New York?
What is one thing I knew?
One thing you wish you knew.
Oh, I wish I knew. One thing that I wish that I knew. That's such a great question. There's so many things it's just like so many things come to mind. Like the first one being that like I wish I knew that I wish I knew that like things like just take like enjoy the process. Like I don't know, like just like enjoy where you're at. Like stop like I was so like, looking ahead, like I just thought way too ahead, and I was just not enjoying what I was about to do. Like looking back, like I was just so anxious, and for what? Like I think about it, you know what I mean? Like everything works out, and like I was just being way too rigid. Um and so I would probably go back and tell myself to like just enjoy this like huge milestone that like is about to happen. And I feel like for anybody that's moving to New York City, like this is like it everything in New York City is a hustle, because you are first of all like you're walking everywhere. You gotta like you
Oh,
don't have a car, like you gotta take the subway, you gotta take your groceries on the subway, you gotta, oh my god, then you gotta go up the stairs, all those stairs with the groceries. Like it's just like everything in New York City is a hustle. Like you can't just and you're out sometimes you're walking in the snow, you're walking in the rain, you know what I mean? Like so like I guess for me, like I wish I could go back and tell myself like, this is just something that you've always dreamed of, and like appreciate just for what it is, right? Like because it's so hard to get here. It
yeah.
really is. Like it's everything about, even though getting here is a hustle, because like getting an apartment in New York City is actually insane. Like it is just so insane. Like it I, that would
How
be
long did it take you to get something?
it took me like, I'm not even joking, like it took me like 2.5 months to secure something. I am so lucky to find where I live now. It's like it matches me so perfect. Like I'm like I couldn't not be any happier. But it was so like I don't know if you remember, but like I was gonna like live in Brooklyn at one point, because that's what
Yeah.
I was looking at, and randomly it fell through. You have to, I don't know why, like in New York City you've got to be making like, it's crazy, like it's like you got to make like 5 times the rent in order to like rent anywhere.
Oh my goodness. That's the stipulation that they're having 5 times the rent. I've heard of
Yeah.
like, I've heard of like, you gotta have double your rent, but I've never heard of the 5 times your rent thing. That is
Yeah.
insane.
It's not, no, here it's like really crazy. At least the building that I'm in right now, like you had to be making like, and mind you, it's like, it's a pre-war building. I don't understand. It's a walk up. You got to walk up. Like I didn't understand. Like it wasn't like at a doorman. Like
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like it's really it's a really grueling process to just get here and secure something. If if you've got a lot of money and you're like, you know, you're pretty secure with your finances and like, you know, you got good credit and all those things, like amazing. Like you probably have no reason why like you wouldn't find a place.
Yeah.
But for me, like I wasn't really making much during grad school. And so like I didn't have anything to really show, you know what I mean? Like I was not making that much. And so like thank goodness that I have the support that I do from my family, because like that's really what made it happen. But I think again, I always think to myself, like, what if I didn't have that? Like what if I
Yeah.
just didn't have, you know, and a lot of people here that in New York City, I've noticed a lot, like they talk about like having parent support, right? So
Yeah.
if you're moving to the city and you're really just doing it on your own, like be so proud of yourself. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because like it is really a hustle to get here.
Mhm.
Everything about it was very stressful. But now that I look back, I'm like, wow, like I really did that. And I'm so proud of myself. You know,
Yeah.
it was a huge bucket list like thing that I wanted to do. And here I am.
You have arrived.
I've arrived and all the hard stuff is over.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just good times from now. So once
Okay.
you get that out the way, it's like, all right,
Yeah. Now you're just living.
yeah, we're here.
Okay. So, I'll ask one more question. Oh, these questions are good. Okay. What legacy or impact do you hope to leave in the mental health community? I'm going to ask you one more question too. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
one more, but I'm like, ooh, I gotta ask that too. But yeah.
Go ahead. Oh,
Legacy.
okay. You're saying, oh, okay, okay.
So this
Um,
one at the moment.
yeah, so the legacy that I hope to leave is that, you know, first of all, I have my own mental health struggles, right? And I used to think to myself that I couldn't be a therapist. How can I tell someone about their life? And you know, I struggle too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of I don't know how other therapists experience it, but for me it was that inner dialogue of like, you know, just fighting with myself. Like, yes, you can do it. No, like, what are you thinking? Like, you right? And so for me, and that's my struggle, right? Because I have anxiety, right?
Mm.
So my legacy is that I can talk to other therapists who are feeling the same way. I can get through to clients who, you know, I don't have to, obviously, like no journey is the same, but I feel that I have connected in just a short amount of time that I've been here. Like I've connected with so many people who have felt similarly to what I have experienced. And that is what Progress with Priscilla is for, is normalizing conversations about mental health, because there are, even though we've made great strides, there still is not enough of them,
Yeah.
right? There's not enough in the workplace. There's not enough conversations about it. Sometimes even in our own space as therapists, because we are, I don't know about you guys, but like for me, I'm sometimes afraid to say like I too struggle, because I don't want my clients to think that like, oh, like, you know, so you're telling me about my life and, you know, like, and you also sometimes don't practice what you preach, right? And like, not, we need to normalize that. Like, we need to normalize that feeling that, like, you know, you're doing just fine with what you know,
Mhm.
right? Like, and just keep going. And that is my legacy, that like, we need, just as normal as it is to talk about like, just as normal as it is to go to coffee with your friend and talk about like whatever, like relationships, like talk about mental health too,
Absolutely.
right? Like we should be able to just freely talk about how it is that we're feeling. And I think that there needs to just be more conversation about it. And if I could be that person to bridge that gap and open up that space for people to be like, me too, like I feel that girl, like, you know. um so yeah, that's my legacy, I think.
That was just such a beautiful message. And you really encapsulate that because how you show up with just your content too, you're a human being first. I just don't see like a therapist behind, the platform. You are literally showcasing your soul And I think that's why people are gravitating towards you too. And you're already sowing the seeds for that legacy. And right now you're just watering it.
Absolutely. And that is like, thank you for saying that, because that is my mission with how I present myself, is that you hit it so well. Like, I'm a human first. Like, and it's funny that you even say that, because I think that in my own head, I'm like, full-time human, part-time therapist.
I love that.
Full-time human. Like,
I'm gonna have to start referring you to that, full-time human, part-time therapist.
right? Because like and I get it, like people, of course, like, hold your therapist to a high standard, absolutely. But at the same time, we're also human. We're gonna make mistakes, and we also have mental health struggles, and it's probably what brought us to the field.
Oh, yeah. A
Like,
lot of us, yeah, therapists, we're calling you out. A lot of us
right.
are because of our
A lot
own.
of us are afraid to admit that and talk about it. So even in our own space, we're not normalizing conversations about mental health. So we just need to continue those efforts. And for every therapist that is doing that online, chef's kiss. Thank you to like every provider that is like putting their raw self out there and just normalizing what it looks like to go to therapy and being in therapy and talking about what it is that you're feeling.
Yeah. I just love this. Such a rich conversation. Oh my goodness. Amazing. Now you got me feeling hyped up, ready to go, leaving legacies. All right. And then last question for the night. What changes, if any, would you like to see in the New York licensure process?
I would love for it to, like I said, I would love for it to be that you could, I don't know how they would do it, but that you could still somehow work, right? Like maybe even like, I don't know, like have certain jobs or something for like the in between, to where you just making some type of income,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like some type of income for people that really need it. Um, and I would like to see more affordable access, like what we talked about, because me as a therapist, I can't afford some of these rates. And I'm a therapist,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I have a master's, like, so it's kind of it almost feels like a double-edged sword. And
Yeah.
I don't really, I just want to like, be very, very real and authentic and say that I don't know what the answer is to it. I don't know what it would look like, but I really do wish that we could have maybe come together to, I hope it doesn't get to a point, I guess I should say, where people are so like, they shy so much away from therapists because of how expensive it is.
Yeah.
And that, because the whole point of why we're doing this is that so that people come in
Yeah.
and get therapy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and so when we kind of, these when we kind of like raise these prices, it causes a lot of like, I've noticed, like, causes a lot of like a bit of a rift between people and therapists, because it's also like it feels like, well, I can't afford it, and now I'm a little bit cynical as to like why you're right. Like, it's almost like it causes this like cynicism or distrust towards, and that's something that's also, that's something that's happening in the medical field, is that more and more people are becoming distrustful of the medical field. And it's because a lot of people are seeing a lot of insurance fraud, a lot of doctors overcharging and being really slimy about and not transparent with money. And now there's this cynical view of doctors, and they're just in it for the money and da da da. Like, we do not want that to happen with therapy. That would be so sad, and it would destroy our mission.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's just my opinion. I don't know. That's kind of
It's a valuable
my
opinion.
opinion.
Yes. Okay. So, before we go, I do want to ask if there's any questions anyone else wants to kind of chime in and ask Priscilla. She's here, ready to answer anything extra. So the floor is yours.
Whatever you guys got.
I think I've asked plenty, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your experience. And Ananza, thank you for leading this discussion. I think it's really helpful. And this really resonated with me since I'm in a similar position that you were in, I guess like half a year ago. So yeah, thank you very much.
You're
Yeah,
so
of course. And I'm glad that it was helpful. I'm curious if you feel like you're heading towards more New York or Florida licensure after hearing all of this.
So the thing is, I'm not going to be there for more than like 2 years. So
okay. Are you
that's
planning to come back to Florida after?
yeah, I'll be back in Florida. I'm going for like a year, max 2.5. Um, so by the time I'm ready to be licensed, I'll be back in Florida.
Got you.
What I will say, it may open up more doors for you long term because you can begin that process in New York. You build those connections. The only thing is, I'm just wondering, like, you can still see, like, if you move to Florida, you can still see clients once you get your license, like, virtually. Because I know some people are in Florida and they do still see clients in New York. So that is an option to have dual licensure. And then on top of that, the counseling compact, right? I don't know how they're going to be doing everything with the compact yet, but you know, that's an option to have those doors open. But just in case, I think having the dual, it's useful. They take the same exam.
Yeah,
The only difference really is the amount of supervision you would need, or not the supervision, but the direct hours.
right.
And you need 3,000 hours versus 2,000 hours, but at least it will kind of prepare you, and you don't have to pay for supervision.
Right. That's a great point. So, Priscilla, right now, can you see clients in Florida too with the type of registration
No,
you have?
no. So I don't know how the double licensure works. Again, I never looked into it. I knew that I was going to be here long term, so I thought about Florida for a little bit, and I was like, it just doesn't make sense. So, I cannot see any clients in any other state that is not New York.
Okay, I see. And Ananza, you can see both, right?
I can see just Florida. So I'm not licensed or anything in New York.
I
But
think you're talking about, sorry, I think you're saying more so that when Tahila is fully licensed.
yes. So when she's fully licensed, so let's say you finish off everything with New York, your hours, you can pretty much apply for licensure also in Florida because you would
Right.
have all the hours that you need. You were taking the exact same exam. You
Mhm.
may have to do the 3 mandatory courses that they're requiring. And I think it's like the 3 courses are 7 hours in total
Mm-hmm.
together. So it wouldn't really be too much for you to do. Like you would meet every single requirement already just with Florida.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
I also want to
That's a
say
good
that
point.
the main thing I see is therapists who are New York and Florida.
Yeah.
Fully licensed therapists being licensed both. I see it all
Mhm.
the time. The 3 of them actually, New York, New Jersey, Florida. So it's got it. I don't know. It seems like it seems like once you're fully licensed that might be um easier states because I just see it all the time. Like you know what I mean? Like New York, New Jersey, Florida. And I'm like, okay, like that's good for me to know too, right? That I could, if I
Oh,
ever do want to go back to Florida, like I could do that double licensure. And obviously that would open up so many doors
Yeah.
and volume. So
for
That's
sure.
long term. I'm thinking just to ensure that you expand with your client base, not just only having Florida, but having New York on top of that. Long term, I think it'll be beneficial.
absolutely shortage of people here. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm going to start wrapping things up. Priscilla, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your journey, your story. It truly is an inspiring story because you have gone through the ringer, and to see how you are right now, just flourishing, and you're so like you're so passionate about what you're advocating for. It's beautiful to watch. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your work. I see you putting in the work too, girl. Your Instagram, you know, this I'm gonna call it a podcast, right? I'm assuming that you eventually wanna
I don't know what I want to do with it.
well, for now, we'll say it a podcast. What you're doing is so amazing. I really do wish that I like if I had someone explain to me the licensure process, and if I had something like this when I was a, you know, like student and learning about it, it would have like wow, like it really just would have. I don't know, like there's so many things that I was so curious about, and oh, Imani said this was super informative.
Hmm.
um there's so many things that I couldn't, not that I couldn't find online, but it was like I was like, what's the real answer? Because like one website says this and then one website says that, and it was just like so flip-floppy, and I didn't know. And then I nobody in Florida was like going to New York, so I was like, what the heck? And unfortunately, the place that I was working, the place I'm working at now, like, not to call them out, but it's true, they were very unhelpful, like with the forms and all these things, and they like, you know, so thank you. Thank you for making a space for people who want to learn and need to be informed about the licensure process, because we've all been there, and there's so much misinformation out there, not just about the licensure process, but about mental health and going to therapy and what it looks like to go to therapy. And I feel that people like us, like providers like us, that we need providers that care and bridge the gap between true and false.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, but thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you for creating this platform.
Right. And I'm just going to leave it at that. So thank you all for tuning in. I will be dropping all of the information in where you can get in contact with Pricillia. Right?
Also, I'm gonna drop my email. This is my personal email, so you guys can email me whatever questions you got. Maybe you have my phone number. You could text me too, no problem. But if you have like anything come up, like please email me. Tahila, if you have any questions, like email me. It's
Yes, I'm definitely going to reach out to both of you. Since you guys both have a little bit of both of the things I'm looking at doing. So, thank you so much. And Ananza, thank you for doing this. You always have the best Zoom meetings. I remember you did the private practice one with all our
Yeah.
professors. That was super helpful.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah, that, like Priscilla said, this is stuff that unfortunately no one really talks about in grad school until you finish, and you have to find all the stuff on your own. So
absolutely.
I'm glad that it helps and it doesn't feel so isolated, and you have a connection that you can reach out to. So that is the goal of this platform, to just get people connected, get information out there that is true and not false, like you said.
Exactly. Exactly. I wish there were more providers that, you know, made it a point to do something like this so that people can get information. So again, thank you.
Okay, you're so welcome. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you all for tuning in. Drop in the chat wherever I'm gonna post this, who knows, but the next destination that you would like to hear from. I don't know, we may end up going to California. We
I
may
was just gonna say California.
you're thinking California. Imani is like Texas. And I'm
Texas.
forgetting the Canadians too. You know, some people might want Ontario, Alberta, wherever. So let me know, and I will find somebody that can talk about their state. Okay. Well,
Absolutely.
thank you guys, and I
thank
hope you have
you.
a wonderful night.
Bye. Bye everyone.